Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Today we're going to be covering budget-centric purchasing and ways your organization can eliminate rogue spend. All right everyone, let's get started. Jimmy Lefevre, the Research Director with PayStream Advisors. I'm joined today with Dave Cornine from Sony Music Corporation and Pierre Ralou from Determine. Welcome guys.
Hi Jimmy, welcome everyone.
Hello Jimmy, this is Pierre Ralou. I'm Director of Business Line P2P at Determine.
For those of you who haven't heard of PayStream Advisors, we are an industry analyst and advisory services firm. We specialize in finance and procurement. We provide free research, tools, and publications on our website, such as our Navigator reports and our Perfect Match AP tools. We also provide advisory services to organizations like those on your screen, organizations that are looking to choose the best software and solutions for their organization. We help them identify the right candidates, assist with RFPs, and ultimately select the best solution. But most importantly, all of our research reports are available completely free for download at paystreamadvisors.com. Joining me today is Pierre from Determine. Pierre, can you tell us a little bit more about Determine?
Sure, thank you, Jimmy. So Determine is a source-to-pay provider. We're headquartered in California, in San Mateo, and we're a global company. We are publicly traded on the NASDAQ, and we have clients all around the world, more than 300 clients, mainly in Europe, in North America, and also a couple of them in Asia and other parts of the world. We help our clients to achieve their goal related to purchasing, either from contract, sourcing, to P2P, and we will focus today mainly on P2P. We are a cloud-based provider, so we're hosted on Amazon, and we provide value across the entire purchasing chain to all of our clients. Talking about our history, Determine is the synergy of three companies. Selectica, which was founded around the contract lifecycle management, IASTA, focused on smart strategic sourcing, and BPAC, which is focused on the purchase to pay. And today, Determine is providing one single platform to enhance the value that we provide to our clients around this source-to-pay aggregated platform. As mentioned, our mission is really to provide a vision, insight, and control around all the cost management across the purchasing chain. So either it's about vendor and contract risk mitigation, either it's about getting the best deals, the best pricing, and the best selection of the vendor through strategic sourcing, or controlling the spend across the entire chain, or value or platform or entire solution is focused around driving revenue and driving compliance. Today, as we're talking about budget management, we will focus mainly on the P2P and the value of the P2P for our clients. Since we started in 2000, BPAC, which is now Determine, has over 100 clients, 100 global clients, but mainly in Europe and in North America. One of the value of the Determine P2P platform is it's designed as a BPM, Business Process Management Tool. That means that our value is really to provide flexibility and make sure that our clients are able to address their own processes within this platform. So we focus on, obviously, procurement efficiency, reducing and automating a lot of the steps associated to the procurement process. We also provide a reduction of the maverick spend across the corporation, so from the cart to from the requisition to the invoice. We also provide and enhance the supplier relationship through a supplier network and an easy-to-use SIM, so supplier information management, including all the best practices that you can find on the market and focusing on risk. And obviously, we are going to help a lot of clients to focus on their budget. We're going to start about budget visibility, we'll talk about budget control, and we also derive on budget planning, forecasting, and budget amendments. So all of those are combined on one single platform, which ends up in an automated AP solution that drive efficiency across the entire application.
Thanks, Pierre. Also joining us today is Dave Cornine from Sony Music. Dave, can you tell us a little more about your organization?
Sure. This is Dave Cornine, Sony Music Entertainment, and we are in the business of finding and developing and recording artists and selling their music worldwide. We operate in over 40 countries. around the world, primarily in North America and Europe, but we have operations in all of the territories that you see on this graph. And as I mentioned, our primary business is in the recorded music business, but as many of you are aware, the music industry has had some challenges for the last 10 years, and we've had to expand into different ways to recover some of the revenue that we lost with the decline of physical market, specifically CDs. So what we have within Sony Music is we've expanded in looking to exploit our catalog of artists, and I'll show that on the next slide, but also looking for opportunities that we found in other parts of the business through the TV programs under Simon Cowell, who's become a partner with our company, and trying to obtain better control and broader access of the rights with our artists so that we can share in their revenue opportunities. And Sony Music has a very deep catalog of artists that go back well before Elvis, many legacy artists such as Springsteen and Bob Dylan and so forth. And the key to our growth is with the new artists that we constantly look to develop and market. So one of our big success stories this year, of course, is Adele. So that's kind of the background on our company and on the music industry.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave, and thanks, Pierre. We're going to hear from both of them a little later. Let's kick things off with today's agenda. We're going to start with discussing challenges in controlling purchasing budgets. We're going to talk about the integration of procurement and budgeting. And we're actually going to hear a real-world success story with Dave and Sony, and we're going to end things off with some Q&A. So let's start off with challenges in controlling purchasing budgets. This is something that's very important to a lot of procurement departments and something we've been monitoring for quite some time at PayStream Advisors. So at PayStream, we survey hundreds of finance and procurement professionals as part of our research practice. We did one survey, and survey respondents said that cost control and supplier negotiation power needed the greatest improvement in their procurement process. And this has really rang pretty true in a lot of our consulting engagements as well. Largely, we've seen that a reduction in cost and an alignment of the CFO and the CPO offices are key targets for organizations looking for software solutions. Pierre, what are you seeing among potential determined clients?
Among our clients, I mean, I think like every one of those points are very relevant. I mean, we talk about cost control, supplier negotiations, and everything. I mean, as a determined platform, I mean, obviously we review the entire process from contract management to sourcing. So supplier negotiation, cost control is very much on the top of every one of our clients. If we focus mainly on the P2P, the integration of the AP within the procurement process is huge, especially when we think about budget. Because the only way to really automate the AP process is to have a very streamlined purchasing and procurement process itself. Usually our clients are focusing on AP, they're looking at the AP automation, how to automatically capture invoices or electronically capture invoices. But then there is the entire coding and the entire allocation of the spend, and this is really automated only if we have a full P2P. And then the impact on the budget is quite important. I mean, what we see is that our clients usually have a very late view of their budget. It's coming from the ERP, they're getting the data out of the ERP at the end, mid-month after the end of the month. And what they're looking for is to be much more proactive and have a much better control on the spend before the actual spend is committed or invoiced. So obviously, I mean, this integration of AP within the procurement process is very important. Then when we're talking about spend visibility, I mean, that's true across the entire platform. And contract compliance, I mean, the fact that we can integrate, for example, the entire contract management within the P2P, provide full compliance on the spend against the contract, visibility on the budget spend against the contract, and those are strong values across our clients.
Well, thanks, Pierre. That's great to hear that you guys are seeing the same things we are. So when looking at the finance side specifically, we asked CFOs and treasurers how they felt the budgeting and forecasting operations were working. For the most part, they said that there's a significant disconnect between set budgets, forecasts, and actual profitability. it's often not as clear as it could be. And Dave, could you tell us a little bit more about budgeting as it relates to Sony and what's unique with you guys?
Sure. I'd say what makes the budgeting process somewhat different or unique in our industry is the volatility of the products that we're releasing. So our profitability and our success is really based on the success of new releases, new music that we put into the market. And there's a lot of expense attributed to the marketing in the first weeks of a new release. So we tend to establish the budget for the project, and then we start to track the success or the performance of the release, and that will help drive whether we're going to increase the amount of marketing spend, should it be a release that's taking off, or maybe a release that's not meeting expectations. We have to make decisions about, do we try to market more and gain more exposure for that product, or do we pull money back from it? Is the release not very good and not very successful, and maybe we pull back on it? So we're in some of our markets, the bigger markets and the more volatile markets, we're reforecasting these budgets almost on a biweekly basis, and I'd say that is a bit of a challenge. This was one of the biggest benefits of what we wanted to achieve from a product like Determine, and I'd say that's an area that's somewhat unique to our industry.
Well, thanks, Dave. That's very unique to have a bi-weekly budgeting. And I would say one thing that you really mentioned was that sort of a lack of integration, and that's something that really rings true with what we see as an underlying problem for most integrations, that procurement and finance are really siloed. They're not integrated, they're not receiving the benefits of integration, so that's the larger picture of what's driving automation. Pierre, are you seeing a lack of integration with companies that are coming to Determine looking for a solution?
For us, from our perspective, this set of integration is actually the key to success. The integration is the key to success. We really see, what we're seeing on the market today is a huge demand for a fully integrated solution that removes the silos between the different departments. We talk about procurement, finance, potentially legal, and sales. From the sourcing to the contract to the procurement to the finance. Most of our clients, and prospects, and most of the companies we see today on the market are really looking for those data to be able to be commonly available across the entire organization. So yeah, the integration, and above integration, but not even integration, we really want to talk about one single version of the truth. You don't want to have repositories here and there, different type of vendors, different type of contracts that are everywhere, and then obviously the spend, which is not able to be consolidated in one place. So there is a very strong demand today as organizations mature their procurement. There's a strong demand to have an integrated platform and make sure that procurement and finance can speak easily on the same words and report easily on the same benefits and results.
Thanks, Pierre. Let's talk about some specific drivers for automation and what we see from our survey respondents. We asked them to choose the top 3 reasons for implementing an eProcurement solution. And what we're seeing is that streamlined requisition and procurement processes was the leading driver, in addition to better visibility and transparency across procurement, followed by improved control and security, controlling maverick spend, and then reduced time to fill cycle time. So I wanted to ask Dave, what were the problems that were real drivers for Sony before choosing a solution?
I would say that while all these factors are important, probably the biggest driver was the control over the marketing and recording cost spend areas. This is a part of the business that really touches the creative side, where it's further removed from finance. It's in the A&R departments or the marketing departments. It deals with a lot of one-time vendors, small vendors, the hairdresser, the mom and pops, and this was an area that I'd say traditionally was never controlled or managed that tightly. So This was an important driver for us to establish a budget, have visibility to the commitments that we were making, and then actually tracking the spend against that. And as I mentioned, it represents such a large portion of our spend, particularly in the music labels, that we felt like we needed to get a better handle and better control over it. So control and visibility of our spend were the biggest factors.
Interesting. And Pierre, what about you? What are you seeing from organizations that are coming to determine what's the key driver for automation?
From our clients and from the company we talk to, I mean, the key drivers are different based on their level of maturity. Some companies are looking for having automated invoice capture. So for example, they're looking for electronic invoices, OCR type of things. So in this case, they're just trying to remove some of the labor to capture the invoice. Some others already have this invoice capture, and they want to automate their, for example, their invoice coding. In this case, they're looking for the entire procurement, making sure that the process itself is streamlined across the procurement. And then, I mean, as Dave mentioned, I mean, there are companies that are a bit more mature and who are really focusing on controlling the spend against the budget and against the contract compliance. And in this case, I mean, they are improving their budgeting process, budgeting, planning and forecasting, as well as budgeting tracking, and this directly and entirely across the entire procurement process. So again, I mean, it depends a lot on the level of maturity and the nature of the business of the company. But one thing is sure, and if we go back to the previous point, I mean, ultimately they all want to have an integrated platform that provides this value.
Thanks, guys. Looks like you see the same drivers for automation. Plus, it's always good to see our research reinforced by real-world examples. I want to change gears here for a bit and focus on what integrating the procurement and budgeting process looks like. So how do we integrate budgeting and procurement? And I think it starts with looking at the needs of the people involved. You want to choose a solution that benefits both the procurement as well as the finance teams. For the procurement team, you have to make budget tools easily accessible. They need to have access to planning initiatives, have the ability to track spend in real time during a project, as well as the ability to analyze the spend afterwards. They should be able to customize budgets based on OPEX or CAPEX or individual contracts or projects. For the finance department, they need to have instant visibility into spend, and they need to be able to ensure legal and corporate compliance regardless of whether projects or procurement is taking place here or abroad. Finally, they should be able to consistently measure spend against initiatives and forecast, and they need to have the ability to change budgetary requirements in real time. And I'd say, you know, on the same note, that's why we brought Determine here today, because they can help with a lot of these advanced features and functions. So I'm going to hand it over to Pierre now, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the Determine suite of solutions. Pierre?
Thank you, Jimmy. Starting with the Determine suite of solutions, as you can see here, I mean, one of the very strong points here is that we want to have one single platform that hosts all the modules related to the sourcing and to the spend. So if you look at this graph, I mean, we're going to go from the top right corner, and we have the sourcing. So the sourcing is really the strategic sourcing, and as you know it, I mean, with the capability to do different type of RFPs, RFQs, and auctions, and ultimately to get the best deal from the best vendor. This sourcing flows automatically into the contract management. So those two modules are very tight, and so then the buyer can generate a contract process, contract lifecycle automatically from the sourcing event. And this contract will basically ensure the compliance of the vendor through the risk analysis process and make sure that the legal and buyers and all the teams within the organization work together through this contract process. Then this contract process is very tied to the procurement process. The objective is to be able to inherit from all the vendor data as well as potentially the catalogs or the price lists that have been negotiated and that have been contracted automatically within the procurement organization. And this procurement will ensure the compliance of the spend against the contract. So again, there is a direct link between the different departments, which is the procurement department, the legal department, and now the rest of the business who is actually procuring. Then we have the invoice management. The invoice management, as we touched base earlier, which is the invoice automation, so the automation of the capture of the invoice, as well as the automation of the coding, which is going to automatically feed the ERP and the GL master. You also have the finance management, and that's one of the focus of today, which is how do we report this spend against what has been forecasted, what has been budgeted, what has been contracted. Sorry. So all of these modules are really tied together around the determined core platform, and which is completely tied to the supplier management. So supplier management is one of the big pieces of the platform, which includes the supplier business network, so for clients to be able to access to the different vendors that are already plugged in our application, as well as a full compliance and risk management across the process. So, I mean, from the standard W9, green, or diversity information to very custom type of risk management that you want to handle. Again, all of that associated with a very strong analytic platform, and all of that is supported by a very strong business process. So whatever your process of vendor onboarding, your process of contracting, your process of procuring, I mean, the system is designed to manage and to follow your organization. Focusing on financial management, a lot of our clients are looking at our P2P from the financial standpoint. I mean, either you're a controller or a CFO, one of the targets is to be able to have the visibility and the control over your spend. And how do you report against that? So one of the strong points that we're talking today is budget management and the capability to address different types of budgets. We will see that in the next slide. But also how do we allocate the cost, and what is the flexibility around the different financial analytics that the financial organization can report against. We're talking about a couple of clients here like RCI Bank, Printemps, Raymond 25, or Sony Music that we are going to be able to view a detailed business case. But all of those clients of ours are looking at our P2P in order to provide them full financial visibility and to tie it very accurately with their GL master, usually in the ERP like Oracle or SAP. One of the very specific things associated to the budget and that we work with our clients is the different structure of the budget through the different industries and companies we work with. And here are three different examples of budget. From the very simple OPEX budget structure, which is based on two levels, so for example, cost center and accounts, and the budget is actually forecasted at the account level. So in this case, the system is going to track the spend at the account level and will roll out to the cost center. So that's one example of what I would call a simple operational budget structure. Then some of our clients are more project-based, and they want to be able to track the spend of a project split between the expenses and the capital spend. And in this case, the system is able to track the different type of spend within that project in real time, and every user can see in real time how much has been, for example, requested, purchased, invoiced, or paid, and how much is available. And this view is dynamic, it's real time, and is operational, very operational. So when a manager or budget owner or project manager is reviewing a purchase, you can see in real time what is the status of his budget. Another example, which is a bit more complex, which is the Sony's example, and we will deep dive into it, is the capability to manage a budget in multiple phases and to be able to record this spend across multiple expense groups. But we will deep dive into it. But what's important with this slide is to understand that there is not one type of budget within one organization. Every organization sees their budgeting process a little bit differently. Everybody plans and forecasts, and everybody tracks and controls. But everybody does it a little differently. And this is one of the benefits we provide, to be able to adapt this budget structure and this budgeting process to your organization. Talking about the integration of the budget within the Procure to Pay, I believe that one of the strong value that we can provide to our clients is bringing a real-time visibility across the entire procurement cycle. From the requisition, on the left-hand side, the time of the requisition when the end user is going to book or to spend any type of money, even before the approval, the system will be able to pre-allocate the spend against the budget. Once this requisition is approved and it transforms automatically as a PO, this PO will represent a committed spend against the budget. So again, this visibility is real time, and enables the budget owner to make the wise decision at the time of approving. Then the goods or the services are going to be completed or received. And in this case, the system will be able to generate the accruals against the budget and the accruals in general against the GL. And the last step of the process will be at the invoice level. So when the invoice is received, the system will automatically allocate the spend against the budget, adapting the amount that was actually invoiced, and dating also the payment information. So once we receive the payment information, this payment will be linked to the invoice, to the PO, to the requisition, and the receipt to the budget. So from the P2P standpoint, the objective is to provide the right information at the right time so everyone can make the wise decision. To illustrate the integration of the budget within the P2P, we put those questions that are coming from actual IT directors that we get quite often. There are two aspects to the budget management challenges. I mean, the first one is obviously the planning. The second one is the tracking and control of the budget. A lot of the time, I mean, the budget planning is a task which is done quite manually or using an Excel spreadsheet. And in larger organizations, that's a process that can take a lot of time. Between the time the IT director will consolidate the budget through its project managers and make sure that it gets all the line items that are built together, and then go through the negotiation process, because there is always some form of negotiation on the budget. I mean, it's a process that can take multiple months, and that can potentially throw the budget planning out of the original schedule. And so this budget planning is one of the challenges that we see across a lot of organizations. Obviously, the other one is the control and the visibility on the budget. And this is really where the P2P can help. But as soon as you start having like consequent budgets with multiple projects, with a lot of individuals that are associated with this process, I mean, it's quite easy to lose visibility on the budget. And a lot of what we discussed earlier, like being able to track each line item against the project at the right time, making sure that if a project is overspending, I mean, making sure that the budget can cover for this overspend. And things like that. So a lot of these questions, probably questions that most companies are asking themselves, is don't have a system in place. The budget management and the experience is very different from an industry to another. Typically, when we have here, I mean, obviously we work across multiple industries. I mean, we have clients in almost every single industry out there. But if we take some of the examples that are shown here, so the first one is an automotive manufacturer. So typically Valeo is one of our clients, and they are managing a very large group. I mean, we're talking about 29 countries, 25,000 employees, and a lot of production sites and research centers. And across those, I mean, they have every type of budget, obviously from the CapEx to build a new R&D product, to the management of the site themselves, to the management of the production lines. I mean, there's a lot of budgeting which is occurring at Valeo. And this is where having a full visibility, a full P2P across all the sites and across all the countries that can cover their needs, that can automatically translate all the currencies and all the spend of each of the vendors, which are obviously global, I mean, is a key for them, key to success and key to control the budget. Entertainment and media, I mean, we will discuss about Sony Music in a couple of seconds, and Dave will be able to explain us how they control their budget. And for the financial services as well, I mean, we work with multiple financial organizations like RCI Bank, which is the financial arm of multiple brands like Nissan and Renault. And they have offices in 38 countries, everywhere in the world, and they have basically the same issue of globalization. It's very difficult for them to control their budget. Even when they are local, most of the vendors are global, and most of the currencies they're managing, most of the tax they're managing are all eating their budget. And without a very strong financial and P2P system, I mean, it's very difficult for them to track out of the spend across their countries and their complexity. So we're moving forward to expand both the number of verticals, the number of industries, as well as the understanding of each of the verticals. But that's one of the value we bring. I mean, we bring a solution which is that has a deep expertise in many, many industries across the world and globally.
Well, thanks for telling us, you know, a lot more about Determine, Pierre. We really appreciate you being here today and helping to further our understanding of your solution. So you mentioned Sony, though, and that's where we're going to go next. I want to introduce Dave, and before that, though, I'm going to give a few metrics about Sony Music Entertainment, and he's going to tell us some of what he experienced and what led him to ultimately choose Determine. So right to it then, Sony Music Entertainment. It's the world's largest, second largest music company. Many of some of the more common labels you've probably heard of, Columbia, Epic, RCA. They have a very large procurement department who manages over 100,000 suppliers and 140,000 projects per year. Some of the key challenges they had coming in was part of standardizing a global SAP purchasing solution. 95% of their spend was on services. You know, and the recording industry in general has had a steady decline in the last 15 or 20 years in revenue, so it's more and more important to decrease costs. I'm going to hand it over to Dave, and he's going to go into these in more detail. Dave, can you tell us more about some of the pain points and challenges Sony was experiencing and what it was like searching for and implementing an automated solution?
Okay, sure, Jimmy. I'll speak to some of the pain points, some of the challenges that we had. We were very decentralized in the way we had operated our finance control and our purchasing. We did not have standardization around a lot of our processes or our master data, so it was very difficult and challenging for us to get a global project P&L. There was a lot of, in the times when we did gather this information, we had to scramble to pull together the data manually through Excel, and we also have many different reporting formats that each country or business unit were accustomed to. At the same time, the business has been changing, so through the years of the decline of the physical product, the nature of our revenue has changed, and we've become more digital. In the case of some of our large customers, iTunes, Spotify, customers like that, they're global. These are global deals that we now have, and we are challenged constantly to roll up all this information into a standardized report that we could look across to all countries, all business units for the same kind of product that we're selling worldwide. So as I mentioned, this represented a lot of challenges, and it really kind of coincided with our plan to go forward with a deployment of a standardized SAP system. So we run SAP. We were running it very differently. We use SAP really for financial accounting purposes, so it's largely FICO, and we do use BW. We felt that there was a benefit by standardizing and sort of redoing our SAP environment and migrating from the older versions of SAP that were in separate instances into a consolidated version. At the same time, we had to come up with a purchasing solution, because in some cases countries had their own systems, or in other cases they may not have even used a purchasing system, and we were either going to have to build multiple interfaces. We felt that it was the right time to sort of piggyback and have the purchasing solution go in tandem with our SAP solution. So we embarked on this financial standardization project, including SAP with the Determine solution. So our goal when we started this project was to bring the countries that were already using SAP, to bring them into a single instance, and I'll take us through the rollout schedule for this because we staggered it every year. As I mentioned, it's used primarily for financial accounting purposes. We have a lot of interfaces from different custom and homegrown global systems. And part of the business case that enabled us to go forth with this investment was we felt we could achieve close to $1 million in IT savings alone year on year by reducing our support staff and also reducing our data center hosting as a result of consolidating into a single environment. And there were additional benefits that we would gain. We have outsourced a lot of our back office accounting operations to a third-party provider, and we've now moved from, I'd say, individual teams that were supporting individual countries to now more of a center of excellence where we look at processes like procure to pay, and they apply to most of the countries that are using SAP. We've also found additional benefits. In the past, when we had to develop an enhancement, we would have to do it multiple times for each instance or each country. Now we more or less have to make the enhancement once, and it applies to all the countries. And we're still continuing on in our rollout plan to bring all the countries into SAP over time. Okay, so beginning in 2012, we established a global template where we pulled together all of the major countries that were using SAP at the time and got them to agree on the standard and common dimensions like chart of accounts and the organization structures and all of the dimensions that we needed to agree in a harmonized manner for all of the existing SAP countries. And once we completed the template, we then embarked on the migration plan. And we started with Germany, which it was a centralized accounting function for Switzerland and Austria as well. So we did GSA, and we also pulled in Czech and Hungary, who were running local systems at the time. And they went live in April 2013, which April is the start of our fiscal year. So we brought GSA live April 13, and then moved on to the rest of the Europe countries who were running SAP. And that was France, UK, Ireland, Portugal, Spain. And we also pulled in Italy, who was running a local system called Formula at the time. So they were a new implementation in SAP, but we took all those countries live in April of 2014. And then we proceeded on to do the US and Canada, which really represented the biggest risk, but also the biggest benefit for us. And this is where our real synergies and cost savings were going to be, because the US has the most business units, and it was the largest instance of SAP for us. So we brought them live this past April 2015. Now, since then, and really along the way, we also started to pull in kind of one-off countries, and that was Turkey, Poland, Greece, and we're actually starting Russia now, where we did those in parallel with a lot of these other activities and brought them live at staggered points of the year. And right now, we're working on the implementation of global SAP for Latin America. So our goal is to bring them live in July of this year. In addition to that, now that we've got all of these countries live, we've also implemented a governance and support model so that our goal is to maintain the global template that we've established and not deviate so that we end up with different versions or multiple systems. And in conjunction with the rollout and deployment of global SAP, we also implemented the determined solution for purchasing. And in the case of GSA in this implementation, they were not using a purchasing solution. We needed to put a workflow process in place so we could leverage the outsourcing the BPO provider required. And so the scope of this was largely on the invoice processing without purchase orders. But it also required us to implement the interfaces that were necessary between BPAC and SAP. So it was the master data coming from SAP that would flow back to the determined solution, and then the invoices that were being entered into determined and flowing into SAP. Then when we moved on to the next phase, which was the rest of Europe, similarly, depending on the country, they had purchasing solutions in place. So in the case of Great Britain, in the UK and Ireland, they had a purchasing solution. Italy had a purchasing solution. So we migrated them into the determined solution. And in their case, they expanded the scope. They were using determined now for the full-blown purchasing. They They were also using the budget control, and they really at this point have an end-to-end P2P solution. We were able to build on the interfaces that were already put in place for GSA, so there were no new interfaces, and we were continuing to build out by adding more countries and expanding the functionality. And then for the last phase for North America, we also were able to leverage the current interfaces. They use Determine in the same way for the full budgeting and procure to pay for Canada, because they were using a different system at the time. And in the case of the U.S., we also added the functionality of the punch-out catalog. So we have deals with a few suppliers where we have negotiated prices on their catalog, and we've introduced that functionality, as well as other overhead and administration kind of purchasing. So following the method that we used for the global deployment of SAP, we also followed that with the Determine solution and either replaced existing systems or added functionality that we needed, and we're able to continue to build on with each implementation by leveraging the interfaces that were put in place. I'd say in all of the countries that we're using Determine and the BPAC solution, one of the things that I think grabbed the attention of management, and one of the features that they like most about it is the visibility to the spend, and we're able to graphically present our budgets, the remaining portion of the budget, what the spend is, what the commitments are from a purchasing perspective, and this was something that was very lacking in the past. If there was any kind of control, it was very often done through spreadsheets and manual processes that weren't real time. The Determine solution has enabled us to have this kind of visibility at a very granular level down to a project. So a new release for us is a project, and we budget at a project, but we can also break it down into very granular categories within our marketing, our recording costs, whatever the project might entail. So this is probably one of the best features that we've realized from the Determine solution, is gaining that visibility that we did not have before.
All right. Well, thanks, Dave. Very good stuff there. So it's time for our Q&A session. We appreciate everyone's patience. We've got a list of questions here. Hopefully we'll be able to get to them all today. First question is from Frank. He wants to know what implementation and timeline generally looks like for implementing Determine. Pierre, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So I mean, we've just been through the implementation of Determine and SAP at Sony. Obviously, I mean, this is quite a specific case because we are actually, I mean, Sony was deploying SAP and we are deploying Determine along SAP, so the timeline was really following the SAP schedule. I would say, obviously, the right answer would be it depends, but a lot of our clients, I mean, for example, if you take a company which is located in North America, which has operations in North America, and wants to be able to implement a P2P out of the box, I mean, we're talking about 8 to 10 weeks with a couple of integration points, and then after, I mean, we can obviously it can be a bit more complex and longer depending on the specific requirements of this company. But yeah, I think we have an entry package around 10 weeks, which is the standard for a mid-sized company in North America.
Excellent. Thanks, Frank, for the question. Next question is from Gabe. He says, I think this question is for Dave. What sort of challenges did you run into in terms of switching over to a new solution? Dave? Okay.
Sure. I'd say the biggest challenge that we faced was the process change, or really the change management aspect of how it affects the business, and that varied and continues to vary depending on the country or the business unit and what history they have in terms of the business process discipline of managing the procurement either at a budget level, or we have some countries or business units that didn't use purchase orders before. So in the case where the countries were already using a procurement system, it became more of learning a new tool, and I think the flexibility and the fact that the tool is web-based is much more easily acceptable or accepted by the business units that we had that were using something that might have been more traditional or client-server based. They adapted more quickly, I would say. In the cases where the countries really didn't have a purchasing process, in addition to not necessarily having budgets, that was a much harder process, and it required much more follow-up. It requires more management support to give kind of the top-down message that, look, we want to control our spend better. These are the things we need you to do, and they really have to reinforce that. Otherwise, you fall into the non-compliance where people don't raise a PO until they get an invoice. So I'd say the biggest challenge that we had was the change management process.
Excellent. So I actually want to throw this question back on Pierre and sort of reverse it. From Determined's standpoint, what was challenging or unique about Sony Music?
Well, I think it's very it follows exactly what Dave just said. I mean, Sony Music is a very large and distributed organization. I mean, they have entities around the world with different processes, and the fact that the objective is obviously to manage the entire spend of the company through the platform. So we had to do a lot of adaptation in terms of specific configuration for Sony in order to adapt the different business process from a country to another country, but working from the exact same platform. In addition to that, I mean, due to the specificity of the business of Sony, I mean, obviously there was a couple of adaptation of the product to what they do, understanding that they're still using the same cloud-based application that any other client had there. So that was probably one of the challenges that we had. But then the other side was there's been a lot of benefits, I would say, if not benefits, but advantages at working within Sony environment because they are deploying a single instance of SAP globally. So I mean, we quickly integrated the entire application with SAP, the entire Determined platform with SAP, and then I mean the deployment itself. I mean, there was very few technical constraints to deploy globally. I mean, typically for North America, I mean, Sony was almost able to deploy by themselves without any intervention of the Determined team, and that has been true for many other countries like Iberia and Canada and so on. So, on one side, there's been some challenges because of the diversity of the business processes. On the other side, I mean, the fact that they made the choice to go with a single centralized SAP application has definitely helped a lot and simplified a lot the entire integration deployment.
Interesting. So, the next question is from Julie. She wants to know what percentage of Determined customers are using the Budget Manager. Okay.
Well, I mean, in general, I mean, a lot of our clients are using the budget management associated with the P2P. I mean, the reason being is this entire presentation that we have a very flexible management, budget management in the application, and therefore, I mean, in a lot of cases, most of the clients we work with, I mean, this is a weakness or this is a difficulty. So I mean, this application is, I mean, the budget management is highly used among our clients. Probably, I would say, 70 to 80% of our clients are using the budget management.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions we have time for today, but you can still put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get back to you via email. For those of you that are viewing this on demand, we'll leave a thank you screen up for a couple minutes so you have time to type your question in. I'd like to thank Dave and Pierre for joining us today, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Jimmy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.